move on to our chili. Back to our refrigerator here. And I know you see that I'm pulling everything out and it's all ready to go, and you don't necessarily need to do it in nice little bowls and stuff like that. But anytime you're making any kind of a dish, it's a really good idea to just get everything ready all at once. Open your cans, chop your onions, chop your garlic, and just get it kind of set out and around you. And you'd be surprised just how much easier that makes the whole process. So we're going to be using our universal sauce in this, and we're going to start. We're going to get our our pan preheated. We're going to put in about 2 tablespoons of oil in here. You know it says 1 tablespoon on the sheet there, but we're making a double batch. There's a couple more of us here today than a single batch would serve, so we'll all get a chance to try this today. And we're going to let our pan get hot. You don't want it to be scalding. You don't want, if your oil starts smoking, you might want to take it off the pan for a second. But we're going to get that warmed up a little bit there. And then we're going to put in our onions. And if you attended one of the other classes this week, we've talked kind of about the onions, but if you haven't, I'll go ahead and repeat that. Is when you're adding fresh onions and fresh garlic to a recipe like this, on this particular recipe, we're going to brown our onions. And you're going to want to do that first by just adding the onions, because the onions are actually going to have the most moisture in them. Yeah. All right. We're going to stretch out here. Can you get a better look at that? All right. So when you're putting the onions in, you want to put the onions in first because they've got the most water in them. And you just want to let that water cook off first before you go ahead and add your garlic. And what that's going to do also is it's going to help start to brown those onions, because the onions are going to take the longest to brown in there once you start adding all the other ingredients. And if you don't give them a head start, you really have a hard time getting that nice brown on it. For the reason of bringing out the sweetness in the onions, and it really changes the flavor of it. I use yellow onion. It really depends on what you're doing. I like red onions for dishes where I'm not cooking them. White onions are equal to yellow onions. All right, so now the onion's got a good head start, and what you want to kind of listen for is that hissing starts to die down. Then we're going to add our garlic, and you don't want to add your garlic first because the garlic has a lot of sugar in it. And when you put that garlic in first and that sugar hits that hot oil, it's going to burn it like that. And if you burn your garlic, you're going to have really, really bitter garlic, which is going to permeate through the entire dish. So you really want to be careful with that. So once you get that in there, don't even let the garlics hit one particular spot. Really get it mixed in there with the onions. And the onions will kind of watch over it and they'll cook out together. You didn't know onions were so responsible, did you? All right. So we're going to let that cook down for just a second. Next we are going to add our water here. Once that, we're just going to give it a little bit longer. We want to get a little more brown. I don't know if you can tell color on that screen, but we're not quite there yet. Okay, we're making a double batch of this, so if you see me adding 2 scoops of that, that's why we're doing this. All right. There we go. One thing that you want to keep in mind too is when you're adding a lot of items to a soup like this that you're trying to, basically once you add the water and the cream base or the universal sauce, what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring up that temperature as quickly as possible so it thickens up. And one thing you want to be careful with is adding all your stuff all at once. You know, I've got some green chilies here and some beans here that if I throw everything at the pot all at once, it's going to be a lot harder for that mixture to really thicken up. So just spend a little time with it, give it about 4 minutes, let it heat up there, and get nice and thick, and then you can just dump everything else in and you're good. And then as we're adding our cream base, or our universal sauce, the only real critical part of it is that you got to make sure you stir that in right off the bat. And even if I have a soup with a bunch of big cut vegetables or anything like that, I still add my water and my universal sauce just right on top of that, and there's never any problems with it clumping up or anything. And it's very, very easy, very, very simple to use. So that's going to take a few minutes as that thickens up. We're going to talk about our chicken here. With the chicken in this recipe, I use canned chicken. You can use any kind of chicken you want. You can even use raw chicken. But what I use is the canned chicken, which is very moist. But if you put it in right now and you're doing a lot of stirring, you're just going to have shredded chicken pieces throughout your whole soup. So I like to keep it a little more chunks. So what I do is the very last thing I'll throw the chicken in and just give it a light stir, and you're good there. So. All right, we're getting there. Can you see that? Or you just look like a white blur there. All of our new equipment here. Universal sauce actually is what's holding everything together, and it's giving it kind of the base flavor for the chili.
So does it thicken and flavor?
It thickens. It does add flavor. It basically is kind of the binder through the whole thing. It is the chili part of the chili. Does that make sense? Instead of just adding if you just added plain water, you'd have to go back and find a way to thicken it up. Or even like when I'm making a chili with just sometimes I'll just use a roux and then a stock, which a roux is just the flour and the butter, and you've got to use that to thicken it up. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and use that, and just throw it all in the pot and let it go. So it's taking a little longer on this back burner here. We're almost there. As soon as that starts thickening up, I think we're about there. We can start. All right. So, and like I said, once again, we're doing a double batch. So I'm adding more than what we would be doing on the sheet there. And if you haven't used the bouillon yet, the bouillon is my favorite bouillon. I'm not just saying that because it has the Shirley J label on that. What I do love about this is it has just different vegetable flavors to it. It's not just salt and chicken. And then this is cumin. And then we're going to add our chili. Now it's starting to thicken up. And then with the beans, the white beans, you don't have to drain. And you just get a little bit of the bean flavor in there and that's kind of the same thing for the chicken. I don't drain the chicken any time that I'm adding it to anything soupy. Anything that's going to have more liquid to it where it's not going to mess up the recipe. Just because that chicken was packed in the juice with a lot of flavor, and it's got all that flavor in the juice, so you definitely don't want to throw that away. And then the black beans, with the black beans, what we want to do is you want to rinse these off. Not just drain them, but rinse them. If you want, put them in a colander or a strainer of some sorts and just run them under the water. Because if you don't do that, the black from the juice of black beans is going to permeate through the color of the chili, and you're going to have gray chili. So it kind of ruins the visual effect of actually adding the black beans there. All right, then our last ingredient is we're just adding our chicken. Like I said, I just kind of stir that through and just let that go.